So basically what I've come up with here for this shot is that I want to have our camera on the ground level like this, like here we're kind of in the shoes of our ground troops, right? And we're in this war-torn region. So I want to start with a chaotic view of what's going on. So what that's going to be, I'm thinking is, we start on kind of a low camera angle on the feet of troops running or on troops that are running. And we start very low to the ground, and then the camera moves somewhat with the troops. We start to slowly pan to the right as we're moving alongside the troops, and then we tilt up and we see this main troop come into the shot, and we see him waving to some other troops that are behind the camera that we can't see. And maybe an explosion goes off, and the troops that we started on with the camera look back and they run away, and they're running from the explosion. We move past that soldier who's waving to the other troops behind the camera, and then we tilt up and we see a ship fly overhead. And then we kind of start to follow the ship, and the ship goes into the rest of the shot. What we're doing here is we're starting on a low level with the camera. We're starting at the very base of everything, which is the troops running on the ground. That's the first thing that we're seeing in this scene. And if this is going to be like an opening shot to something, this is kind of what I'm going for here, is an opening shot to a scene or a film even. That's going to really put us right into the action. And then we're going to slowly start to introduce the rest of the scene. So maybe as we see the soldiers running, we're moving up and starting to see some of the destruction and the buildings around, like in this shot, or in this shot where, we start to see some kind of things like this to introduce us to the environment. And then we're, moving into a shot that's kind of moving over a landscape. And maybe we see some things on fire like this. And I'm thinking in terms of texture, I would really like to make it look something like this, maybe a little more rocky, but something like that. That's kind of the basic outline of our shot. Knowing that, we can kind of go in here to Unreal, and it's a good idea to kind of at least have an idea of what you want to do or what you want to accomplish with your shot. So what we can do now is actually kind of start blocking out the shot. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use basic shapes to do this. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a landscape real quick. We can do that by going up here to landscape mode. And the reason that I'm going to do this is for a couple reasons. The first one is going to be to get a decent scale set up. And I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. We're going to actually import a mannequin into our scene. We're going to make a landscape so that we can easily then sculpt that landscape to give us the basic shape of what we want in our scene. We can always add a material later, I guess. I'm just going to grab one from Quixel real quick. So if I open up Quixel Bridge, yes. All right, so I just grabbed this Icelandic rocky ground. I'm going to download it. We're just going to use this to give us a basic look to our landscape. We'll add it to the project. And I'll just get out of this, and now what we can do is go in here and we'll use this one, and we're just going to hit create. What we can do now is we can use the brush to sculpt our landscape. So what I'm first going to do before I do any of that is go into our content here. We're going to go up here and we're going to click on add. And we're going to go to add feature or content pack, and we're going to do our third person. So we're going to add this to the project, and what that's going to do is actually add a mannequin and some third person game controls. So if we go into characters, now we have our mannequin from UE4, and if we go into the meshes, now we actually have our mannequin. We can just drag him in here, and that's going to actually give us some scale to show us the size of what a real person would be, so that we can actually sculpt our scene according to the size of what a normal real person would be. Okay, so what I generally want to do with this particular scene, I want to have the ground be kind of flat because we're going to actually be animating our character to run on the surface. That area is going to need to be flat. And so we'll leave, a good something like this amount of space. And I'm thinking we'll maybe have a building over here, but I want to have the ground kind of start to slope up a little bit. So maybe like over here, we'll start to kind of like add a bit of a slope. That might be too much actually. Let me decrease the tool strength here. We'll increase the fall off as well. So the idea is we're going to kind of have this small hill and then this kind of raised up area over here. We're going to turn on the erosion tool here and just kind of erode that a little bit because it's too much. So this is the kind of plan that I have for the shot, just so you can visualize what we're going for here. So we're starting low on the feet of the soldiers, and there's going to be some rocks and things in the foreground and maybe a building somewhere over here. We'll lay that out in a second. And we're going to come over here and we're going to start to raise the camera. So we're going to do something like this. And we're going to encounter another soldier that comes over here and he's waving to soldiers in the background. We're going to move past him and then we're going to come up and we're going to see a ship fly overhead as we kind of raise up into the sky and move into the distance here. And then we're going to follow the ship through the rest of the shot, right? So that's the basic idea. And what we can do here is now just start blocking out our scene. So I think this hill will work for now. You know, we'll maybe have some stuff like this in the over here. Just give it a bit of shape right now. I think that'll honestly be good for our landscape right now. So if we go into our selection mode, now we can actually start placing some of these objects. So I'm going to get a cube and we're going to drag the cube into the scene. This is going to represent our building, right? Let's move this guy over here. We'll move this up and I'm going to scale this up in this direction and this direction. And remember, we're hitting R to switch to scale and W for move and E for rotate. So we're going to set this, what's going to be a fallen building somewhere over here, right? Something like that. Maybe rotate it slightly. I'm going to turn my snapping down. To a more reasonable level. There we go. So something like that. All right, so that's going to be our building. Our main soldier is going to be somewhere in this area. And then we're going to have other soldiers, so I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate him. And we're going to just move these guys around. So maybe we'll do 2 other soldiers, something like that. And we're going to start on these guys. And they're going to be running, and then we're going to come over to this guy who's going to wave to people in the background. And then we're going to come over here and ship flies overhead and bam. So that's going to be the basic blocking of our scene. And, you know, I'm thinking of some sort of like something in the sky. I have these cool assets. It's like a the arm of a crane kind of. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to duplicate this, move it here, kind of start rotating things around, scale it down. So we're going to have these kind of objects up into the sky here. Duplicate that, turn it 180, and then we're going to move it over here. Have them kind of intersect, creating this So that's going to kind of give us a cool little setup. So, you know, if we come over here, then when we pan up into the sky, we actually have something there that's going to give us some interesting, like an interesting look to our shot. And, you know, in the distance, you know, maybe we'll have like another fallen building. In terms of scale, I'm thinking, you know, this is going to be a fractured, kind of destroyed looking building, and I'm going to provide those assets for you guys. So we want it to be a little bit bigger, maybe something like that. So now you can see that we're kind of getting something that could be a little more interesting going on here. Maybe we'll do like a duplicate this, make it a little smaller. And do like, you know, maybe a little debris pile here or something to kind of break up the landscape. We want to do this kind of with our composition in mind, but also it can be helpful to look at things from a bird's eye perspective as well. So I think that can be, you know, really nice for our basic composition.